Albert Beckles, who fell and convulsed violently as he competed on stage, to Safiso Tabethe, whose neck-breaking flip was caught on camera. These are the most shocking things to happen to bodybuilders on stage. Tom Platz. Now, if you know anything about the golden era of bodybuilding, you know that Tom Platz had what many consider to be the greatest set of quadriceps the sport has ever seen. Massive, striated, deeply separated, his legs were like something out of a science fiction movie. They were the legs that launched 1,000 memes before memes even existed. But at the 1985 Mr. Olympia in Brussels, Belgium, those very same legendary quads became the source of one of the most visually disturbing cramping episodes ever captured on a professional bodybuilding stage. As Platz moved through his mandatory poses, the front double biceps, the side chest, and most notoriously the front lat spread, his quads began to seize violently. We're not talking about a little twitch here or there. We're talking about massive wave-like spasms rolling across his legs in real time, buckling his knees, dragging his feet awkwardly across the stage, and twisting his muscles into shapes that looked almost alien. Grotesque, rippling contractions that you could see in horrifying close-up detail under those bright Brussels lights. The cramps were relentless, and the agony on his face was unmistakable. But here's what made this moment truly unforgettable. Tom Platz refused to quit. He powered through every single pose with sheer, gut-wrenching willpower, grimacing through the pain, fighting his own body with every fiber of his being, and finishing his routine before walking off that stage under his own power. The cause? Extreme dehydration and electrolyte depletion from aggressive diuretic use, standard practice in that era, but devastating when the body finally says enough. Despite the ordeal, Platz still placed 5th overall, but the image of those legendary quads rippling and seizing and hardening into unnatural shapes under the lights became permanently seared into bodybuilding history as one of the most disturbing things anyone had ever witnessed on the Olympia stage. Albert Beckles. Now we move to a man who embodied longevity in the sport of bodybuilding like very few others ever have, Albert Beckles. A respected professional who competed well into his 50s, Beckles was a living testament to the idea that age was just a number when it came to stepping on stage and holding your own against men half your age. But in 1988, during a professional IFBB competition, that decades-long career of pushing the human body to its absolute limits finally caught up with him in the most terrifying way possible. While holding his poses under the blazing stage lights, Beckles was suddenly overtaken by violent, full-body convulsions, his muscles twitching and jerking uncontrollably, his entire frame spasming in a way that made it immediately clear something was catastrophically wrong. Within seconds, he had collapsed to the stage floor in obvious distress, and the convulsions continued right there in full view of the audience. Medical personnel rushed to the stage to provide emergency resuscitation and stabilize him, and the footage from that night, grainy, archival, but deeply unsettling, captures just how intense and frightening those seizures truly were. The culprit, as it so often was in that era, was extreme dehydration, combined with severe electrolyte imbalances brought on by aggressive diuretic use. Beckles ultimately recovered, but the incident became one of the earliest and most vivid cautionary tales about the cumulative toll that a long career of extreme peaking methods can take on even the most seasoned competitors. It was a stark reminder that the body keeps a ledger, and eventually it comes to collect. Sergey Koulv. Staying in Russia, and in that very same year of 2011, we come to the case of Sergey Koulv, a bodybuilder who at the time was competing at the championship of St. Petersburg and Leningrad Oblast. What makes Koulav's story particularly interesting is not just the terrifying nature of his collapse, but what happened afterward, both immediately and in the years that followed. During his posing routine, Koulv appeared stable at first, moving through his poses with the kind of focused intensity you'd expect from a serious competitor. But then, without any warning whatsoever, his body simply gave out. His eyes rolled back, his body went completely limp, and he dropped to the stage floor in a hard, unbroken fall that sent a collective gasp rippling through the arena. The footage is chilling in its suddenness. One second he's posing, the next he's unconscious on the ground. Now, when the clip first began circulating online, it spread like wildfire, accompanied by rumors and panicked forum posts claiming that a bodybuilder had died on stage. The speculation was rampant, and the video's raw, unedited nature only fueled the fear. But the reality was different. Koulv received medical attention, recovered relatively quickly, and was either helped off or walked off under his own power. The incident was attributed to severe dehydration, critically low blood pressure from aggressive peak weak cutting, or a vasovagal faint triggered by the combination of bright lights and the physical strain of holding conditioned poses. And here's the part that makes this story remarkable. Sergey Koulv didn't just recover from that moment. He went on to become an IFBB professional and even won the Arnold Classic Amateur Overall title in 2016. But that clip from 2011, it remains one of the most disturbing and widely shared onstage collapse videos in the history of the sport. Heath. Now, when you think of Phil Heath, the Gift, the man who would go on to win 7 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles, you think of dominance, precision, and an almost robotic level of stage presence. But in 2009, before all that glory, before the dynasty, a young and rising Phil Heath experienced a moment on stage that proved even the most gifted athletes in the world are not immune to the brutal toll of this sport. It happened at the 2009 Colorado State Championships, where Heath was guest posing in his home state. Everything seemed normal at first. Heath was moving through his poses, the home crowd was loving it, and then, in an instant, it all fell apart. As he transitioned into a pose, attempting to kneel or pull a leg in, his body seized up with severe muscle cramps. His knee buckled, his leg gave way completely, and he dropped, first to his knees, and then flat onto his back in visible, undeniable agony. He lay there writhing on the stage floor, struggling against the cramps that had taken over his body, while multiple people rushed in to help him stand and exit. What made this moment especially jarring was the confusion in the crowd. Some people initially thought it was part of his routine, a dramatic flair for the audience, but the pain on Heath's face made it very clear that this was no performance. Heath later explained the incident as the result of brutal cramping brought on by dangerously low fluid and electrolyte levels, the same invisible enemy that has felled so many competitors before and after him. The clip went viral as undeniable proof that the sport's hidden toll doesn't discriminate, not even for a man who would one day be called the greatest of his generation. Paul Dillet. There are certain moments in the history of bodybuilding that transcend the sport and become legendary, talked about in gyms, debated in forums, and replayed on screens for decades after they happen. Paul Dillet's statue incident at the 1994 Arnold Classic is unquestionably one of those moments. Dillet, a Canadian pro nicknamed Jurassic and Freakenstein for his staggering size, was competing in the prejudging round alongside elite competitors like Kevin Levrone when his body simply stopped working. Without warning, every muscle in his body seized up completely, locking rigid like stone due to catastrophic muscle cramps triggered by extreme dehydration and what was widely believed to be aggressive Lasix abuse, a common and dangerous practice in 1990s bodybuilding. He froze mid-pose, completely unable to move. He couldn't lower his arms. He couldn't bend his legs. He couldn't walk. He was, for all intents and purposes, a human statue, trapped inside his own body in excruciating agony. Officials had to physically carry him off the stage because he was utterly incapable of moving himself. But here's what the audience didn't know, what the cameras didn't capture. The situation backstage was even more dire. Dillet's dehydration was so severe that medical personnel couldn't find a vein for an IV. And then, as he later revealed in a Generation Iron interview, his heart stopped for a full minute. He was clinically dead. For 60 seconds, Paul Dillet was gone. They resuscitated him, brought him back, and he survived to compete again. But the footage of that frozen, agonized figure being carried off the Arnold Classic stage became the defining image of just how dangerous the water manipulation practices of that era truly were. It's a moment that the bodybuilding world has never forgotten, and one it probably never should. Dallas McCarver. Dallas McCarver was supposed to be the future. At nearly 300 pounds of competition-ready muscle, the young American heavyweight was routinely spoken about as a future Mr. Olympia contender, a generational talent with the size, the symmetry, and the drive to one day stand at the very top of the sport. People looked at Dallas McCarver and they saw the next great champion in the making. But at the 2017 Arnold Classic Australia, during the prejudging round, the world got a terrifying glimpse of just how thin the line between glory and catastrophe really is in professional bodybuilding. As McCarver moved through his poses under the intense stage lighting, something was clearly wrong. He began shaking his head, looking disoriented, his movements becoming unsteady and erratic, and he appeared to be signaling for help, reaching out, his face twisted with confusion and distress. And then, in one horrifying instant, he dropped, collapsing hard to the stage floor, in what appeared to be severe respiratory or neurological distress. The chaos that followed was immediate and frantic. Helpers and medical staff rushed the stage, surrounding him, working to stabilize him, eventually carrying him off as the crowd watched in stunned, helpless silence. Hundreds of people who had come to watch a bodybuilding competition suddenly confronted with the very real possibility that they were watching a man die. The footage, which spread rapidly and relentlessly through the bodybuilding community, became one of the most talked about clips of the year, a visceral, undeniable illustration of the toll that extreme peak week dehydration, diuretic use, and the physical demands of maintaining conditioned poses at that size can take on the human body. McCarver recovered from the incident and returned to training, but what makes this story so haunting, what gives it a weight that goes far beyond a single scary moment on stage, is what came next. Just 5 months later, in August of 2017, Dallas McCarver was found found dead at the age of 26. The cause was unrelated to the onstage collapse. He had choked on food at his home. But for everyone who had watched that terrifying fall in Australia, it felt like a grim premonition, a warning sign, written in the starkest possible terms, that had gone unheeded. The onstage collapse remains one of the most visually disturbing non-fatal moments in modern bodybuilding, and the tragic arc of Dallas McCarver's too short life ensures it will never, ever be forgotten. Dorian Yates. Dorian Yates. Nobody ever looked at Dorian Yates and thought he was fragile. He was the Shadow, a 6-time unbroken Mr. Olympia winner out of Birmingham, England, who ground through his sessions in a basement hellhole known as Temple Gym and offered the outside world almost nothing, no previews, no updates, until he materialized on stage and dismantled everyone standing next to him. But the 1997 Mr. Olympia in Long Beach, California, held on September 20th, revealed something no one expected. 3 weeks out from the contest, on August 31st, Yates was mid-set on lying triceps extensions when he felt what he later called a violent explosion inside his arm. The triceps tendon had ripped away from the bone, somewhere between 75 and 95% detachment. Swelling, deep bruising, and grotesque distortion followed almost instantly. A rational human being would have pulled out of the show entirely. Yates had no interest in being rational. He walked onto the Olympia stage regardless, masking the damage with carefully modified poses. The toll was impossible to disguise completely. His back locked up during the rear, lat spread, and several other mandatory shots, twitching and seizing in plain view as his body all but begged him to walk off. He refused. He claimed his 6th straight Olympia title, though the decision sparked heated debate. A significant portion of the audience and media believed Nasser El Sonbody had earned the win, given how visibly wrecked Yates appeared. A post-show MRI verified the near-total rupture, and Yates traveled to New York for surgical reattachment because no specialist in the UK possessed the required expertise. The tendon never recovered its former integrity or power. It ended his competitive career for good, but he walked away still holding the crown, unbeaten. Today, he lives in Marbella, Spain, well into his 60s, in good health, operating DY Nutrition and guiding a new wave of athletes. Flex Wheeler. Kenneth Flex. Wheeler was, by virtually every measure of proportion and beauty that bodybuilding has ever recognized, the most flawlessly constructed physique to ever stand under stage lighting. 4 Arnold Classic titles and 3 runner-up placements at the Mr. Olympia. A build so harmonious and seamless that it made elite-level competitors beside him look like jigsaw puzzles with pieces from different boxes. But beneath all that proportion, something catastrophic was unfolding in silence. Across competitions in the late 1990s and into the early 2000s, particularly around 1999 and 2000, when his medical crisis reached its worst, Wheeler's muscles seized violently during back shots like the rear lat spread, his legs shaking dangerously as a result of extreme dehydration and depleted electrolytes brought on by ruthless diuretic protocols during peak week. But dehydration alone didn't explain everything. What Wheeler hadn't yet discovered was that he carried focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, a genetic kidney disorder finally identified in 1999, which triggered fluid buildup, systemic toxicity, and circulatory dysfunction that presented like catastrophic cramping whenever his body was pushed to the breaking point of holding poses under stage lights. Competition footage from events like the 1999 Mr. Olympia captures him fighting to maintain each pose, teetering on the edge of collapse but pulling himself back through raw determination.
Let's welcome on Kenny Flex Wheeler.
And speaking of first, Flex Wheeler on the stage now.
His health deteriorated further from there. 9 surgeries in 2003 that each carried a real risk of death, a kidney transplant, and ultimately a partial amputation of his right leg in 2019, caused by blood clots and tissue death accumulated over years of compounding trauma. By his own estimation, he endured somewhere around 500 to 600 surgeries across 2 decades. Now in his 60s and walking on a prosthetic limb, Wheeler trains others and speaks publicly about health, standing as living proof of both the magnificence and the savagery that bodybuilding can produce. Wanderson Morera. This is one of the most recent entries on our list, and it is also one of the most devastating. On May 10th, 2025, at the Pantanal Bodybuilding Championship in Campo Grande, Brazil, a 30-year-old competitor named Wanderson Morera, a rising talent in the Brazilian bodybuilding scene and, more importantly, a father of 2 young children, stepped on stage for what should have been another step forward in his promising career. It turned out to be his last. The details vary slightly depending on the source. Some reports state that Morera collapsed immediately after completing his routine and while exiting the stage area, while others describe the collapse as occurring mid-competition. But what every single account agrees on is that it happened visibly, publicly, in full view of judges judges, spectators, and cameras. There was no hiding from it. There was no looking away. Eyewitnesses described him appearing unsteady in the moments before the collapse, wobbling slightly, his body betraying the strain that was already tearing through him from the inside, and then he simply dropped. Emergency personnel were on the scene quickly, and what followed was a desperate, agonizing effort to save his life. Over an hour of on-site resuscitation attempts, with medical teams working tirelessly, refusing to give up, pouring every ounce of training and effort into bringing him back. But it was not enough. Wanderson Morera was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspected cause was cardiac arrest, likely exacerbated by the extreme dehydration, immense cardiovascular strain, and performance-enhancing factors that are common and commonly lethal in the world of peak bodybuilding conditioning. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the Brazilian bodybuilding community, with his coach issuing emotional tributes and fellow competitors expressing their grief publicly across social media. And for the wider bodybuilding world, it served as yet another painful, undeniable reminder of the heart risks that lurk beneath the surface of this sport. Risks that claim lives not just among aging veterans, but among young, seemingly healthy athletes in the prime of their careers. He was 30 years old, he had 2 children waiting for him at home, and he died doing what he loved, on the stage where he had dreamed of standing. Safiso Tabethe. On August 5, 2017, at a local bodybuilding competition in Umlazi, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, a 23-year-old junior competitor named Safiso Tabethe took the stage. Tabethe was known among his peers for his acrobatic entrance, a signature backflip that he would perform to energize the crowd before beginning his posing routine. It was his thing, his calling card, the move that set him apart and got the audience on their feet. On this night, he attempted that backflip one more time, and in a split second, in the time it takes to blink, to breathe, to look away and look back, everything went catastrophically wrong. Tabethe under-rotated severely on the flip. Instead of landing on his feet, he came down head first on the hard, unforgiving surface of the stage floor. The impact was immediate and devastating, a catastrophic cervical spine injury that broke his neck on contact. Video footage, which has been shared widely across the internet often, accompanied by graphic content warnings, shows the horrifying moment of impact, followed by brief convulsions as he lay motionless on the stage, and then the awful, suffocating silence of an audience that had gone from cheering to stunned disbelief in the span of a single heartbeat. Emergency responders rushed him to the hospital, but it was already too late. Safiso Tabethe was pronounced dead on arrival. He was 23 years old, 23, an entire lifetime of potential, of dreams, of possibilities gone in a fraction of a second on a hard stage floor. The aftermath of this tragedy sparked widespread and urgent discussion about safety protocols at amateur and local bodybuilding events. Events where the stages are hard, the medical staff is minimal, and the desire to entertain can lead to risks that absolutely no one is prepared for when they go wrong. It is, by every measure, the most disturbing moment in the history of competitive bodybuilding, and it is a moment that should never ever be forgotten. Not as entertainment, not as spectacle, but as a solemn, painful reminder that behind every pose, every flex, and every crowd-pleasing stunt, there is a human life at stake, a life that once lost can never be brought back. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.